Hello everybody, my name is Jared Bendis. I'm the Creative New Media Officer for the Freedman Center for Digital Scholarship at the Kelvin Smith Library here at Case Western Reserve University. And I'm sitting right now in the Digitization Annex. And the Digitization Annex, which you'll see in our other videos, is this very special place that can digitize almost anything. And today, I want to take you through a very special project, and that is the digitization of 16 millimeter sound color film. Now, we just got a Retroscan Universal Mark II film digitizing scanning unit, and it is amazing. And I thought I'd show you what it's like to digitize 16 millimeter film with it. Now, the first thing you need to know about the Retroscan Universal Mark II is that it doesn't use the sprockets at all. It just pulls the film along. And because it pulls the film along, you're going to need to make sure that you have not just a header, but also a tail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to splice on some leader, and then I'm going to run it through the machine. And again, it's safe to run it through the machine because it's not actually going to do anything. It's practically touchless as it runs through the machine. It's going to let me look to see if there's any bad splices, and if I wanted to, I could clean the film as I go. And then when I get to the end, I can add a tail on, and that'll allow me to make sure that I'm always keeping tension when the film is running across the digitization frame. Now, I really recommend doing this, not just because you have to, because you need to put the tail on it, but because you don't know how tight this is wound. Not only do I not know if there's any splices, and I can pretty much see that there aren't any splices, but I want to make sure the condition is good. And so by actually running it from one spool and then rewinding it onto the spool, I know that this isn't going to be too tight. I know the condition of the film, and that'll actually make my life much easier. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is that there's some setup to make the Retroscan Universal Mark II work. There's lots of different things you can do, the adjustments, the focus, all the type of stuff. It also allows you to play with different types of film gates. So this is 35, we can do 8, 35, 16. We can buy other ones as well. Now, my machine has already been tuned in, which means that I'm actually going to be pretty good to go. I'm not going to have to go through and refocus or reframe and do any of that type of stuff right now. But I'm going to point along the way what it takes to make this work. Once it's tuned in, though, and right now I'm tuned in for 16 millimeter, I can just keep running film after film after film and not have to worry about anything, which is, again, what makes this absolutely amazing. So first things first, let's add some leader. You know, it's really funny as you see me wearing gloves, and that's because when you're holding film, you're supposed to wear gloves. So let me come over here and take a look. So there is my film. And then I have already pre-cut a piece of leader. And it's nice since I always need the same length of leader. I haven't measured on the table, so I know exactly how much leader I need. And I put it in here. I love these good splicing units. All right, put it in. And there it is, my Kodak press tape universal splicer. Come up over here, get rid of that piece of extra. Now, of course, what's lovely about this splicer when you're doing 16 millimeter is you get that wonderful little key notch, which I think is great. It makes really nice splices, so you can kind of see how that's going to come in together. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. And then I've got my press tapes here, and it comes with 2 press tapes per package, one from the front of the film and one for the back. So I come over here and I put it in the holes, lift it up, hold it down, hold the other side, lift it up, pull it out, hold it down. And then now that that's in, I can flip it over. All right, so now, voila, beautiful. I have nice, tight splice. And now I can come over here and I can load up. Now, our unit is sort of the deluxe unit. We paid for the extra large take-up reels, and that makes all the difference, by the way. I think it was really useful. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take my film and I'm going to put it on the take-up reel. All right. And then I'm going to screw it down. Now, it actually screws the other direction because otherwise it would come loose. So you get used to the fact that one of these is clockwise and this one is counterclockwise. Now I'm going to thread it over and then under and then across. And I've already got the 16 millimeter gate in there. And I've also got the 16 millimeter mask in there, which is great. And I'm going to go under again. And if you'll notice, by the way, that these rollers have no sprockets on them, and these rollers have no sprockets on them either. Matter of fact, this is all just being pulled along, which is great. And then I kind of go over and under and then back into my take-up reel. And the nice part about it is I've got so much room that even though I'm still loading my take-up reel, I'm still in the leader here, which is really what I want. And notice, by the way, how it just kind of sits there in the groove, right? So it sits there in the groove, and there's a little bit there, just kind of touching it by the edge, which is wonderful. Now, it's not even on yet, but I can see that if I just pull this, it's just gonna pull around. Now, if I turn the unit on, There it is. There's the light. And again, that's why I have the mask on there. Right now it's on, I've got it on full brightness, so I can adjust the brightness. And right now I'll turn the brightness off. And what you'll notice is that I have the laser. What's cool about the laser is that the laser has been focused to be a really, really tight beam on the film plane, which is great. So it's on the film plane. And then I adjusted the laser back and forth so it's exactly where the sprocket is. And every time the laser goes across the sprocket, it actually is going to trigger the camera, and we're going to see a little blue light flash there, which is really awesome. But right now, it's not doing much of anything, which is cool as well. So if I were to come over here and press forward, it'll start dragging the film, and that's it, just dragging the film. And you can see that as it's dragging the film, little red dots are blinking, and then little blue dots are blinking. And so this lets me know that the film is actually moving, and then of course it's lined up properly, and that's all you need to know. So at this point, this is all sort of just straight mechanical, except for the little laser. What the laser is going to do is going to trigger the software to actually fire this camera. Now this camera is a 3K camera. I think I'm only said it's a 2K resolution. It's a 3K camera. It's a manual focus, manual iris, and of course all these manual adjustments. And I've already framed it up, which is phenomenal, but it's all good to go. Now right now, I'm literally just letting the film go by. I could run a cleaner on it if I wanted to. You know, I could have a cleaning cloth, but really what I'm looking for is basically I'm just inspecting the film. I'm looking to see if there's going to be any breaks. I'm looking to see if there's going to be any trouble areas later on. And lastly, I'm waiting till it gets to the end so I can add that tail on, which will keep tension, and then I'll rewind it and do it all over again. But as you can see, there's very little danger to the film right now because nothing's really touching it. It's just dragging it along. And that one bit of tension, the dragging it along, that's the risk I'm willing to take here. So I'm going to let it finish doing its thing, and we'll do that. Now, while it's doing its thing, I actually can come over and do a couple of the settings about, like, you know, making sure I'm seeing what I want to see. Let's go take a look at the screen. So the software is really straightforward to use. You basically set up your folder, you set your settings. In this case, I'm telling you the 16mm film. I've set everything to default, auto exposure, no shadow adjustment, just red, green, and blue set to 0. And then if I click on preview, you're literally going to see what the camera is seeing triggered every time that laser hits the sprocket. You'll notice, by the way, that you can see that I've left it zoomed out far enough so that I can see the sprocket and that I can see the waveform, which I'm going to have to post-process in a different piece of software later to turn this back into the actual waveform. Now, I could zoom in further if I wanted to, and I'm not really too worried from a quality perspective. I'm not losing that much by not zooming in further. I can actually use the sprocket as an alignment guide in something like After Effects to kind of keep things fluid. But at the end of the day, it's really, really simple. I just come over here, and I see what I'm seeing. And there it is, the end of the film. So all I got to do is splice on a tail. So now I've got the tail spliced on, I've got to thread it back to the machine. All right, now it's threaded back to the machine. I click reverse and let it take the film back onto the spool. Another opportunity for me to clean it and check for any breaks, though I've already checked and this thing is golden. I can also come back over here and take a look to make sure that I'm happy with the way that things are framed and focused, and I'm very happy with that as well. So I'll let it run backwards for a moment, and then I will do it one more time. So we're back where we started from. The film is rewound. It is threaded properly. The leader is there. I've set my exposure manually because I've already looked at what it's going to be like, and I'm good to go. So I come over to my software, again, make sure that everything's the way I want it to be. I hit start, it starts to capture, and then I come over here and I hit the forward button. It starts to move, and it's moving by. And of course, there's the frames going by, which we can see because of the flickering light, and because we can see the film actually going by as well. And you'll notice it's telling you how many frames and how many feet, since it knows it's 16mm. So now all I have to do is wait for the whole thing to go by, and then once that's done, I can start on post-production. It really is amazing just how elegant this system is. It's very, very elegant in its simplicity. The film just gets pulled along, the camera's triggered by the laser, and the frames just get assembled on the machine. And when it works flawlessly. And anything there it doesn't work, it really is about the condition of the film. And then you have to deal with other things that we'll deal with at a later date. But right now, I also want to show you how well this machine just works. And it just works. Look at that. Watch it go by, doing its thing at its own speed. All right, we're getting close to the end. And we're at the tail, so I can just hit rewind. Once it's been recorded, I come over here and I click on the video since it's already been recorded and now it's from film to video. I can set it to 24 frames a second and I can hit play, and it'll actually play the preview of the video as is. Let me actually move it a little bit forward and you can actually see it play much faster than it was capturing at, because of course it captures at whatever speed it wants to, based on how basically big the film is. Now that I've done this, if I come over here and I export it, when I go to export the film, I come over here and I highlight it, and I tell it that I want it as a series of image sequences. And I've already set it to be TIFF uncompressed. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a folder filled with uncompressed image sequences of the actual resolution and the absolute aspect ratio of the camera that it came with, which is wild. It's going to take a little bit of time, though, because it's going to create a lot of files. Let me click Export Now. All right, now that it's done, let's take a look in Retroscan Exports, CW Graphics. Here is the folder, and if I click on Properties, you're going to find out that there's 9,614 frames, and it's 65 gigabytes. And if you look inside, literally every single frame has been recorded as a 4:3 aspect ratio, full color, uncompressed TIFF file of 2048 by 1536, which is pretty wild. Now, I'm going to have to use a program like Premiere Pro to reassemble it, but before I do that, I want to go in and I want to create a waveform out of this. I'm going to do that by going to AEO Light, which is a free software package, which is going to allow me to turn my TIFF files into a waveform. All right, so I'm going to come over here and make a new project, and I'm going to browse to that folder full of images. So there it is again, there it is again, there it is again, and I'm going to change it from DPX to TIFF file and pick my first frame, and voila, it's going to give me a little preview window, and it's going to show me my entire movie. Now, let me jump ahead a little bit, because obviously there's not a lot of audio in this part. So let me come over here until I can see some waveforms coming up. And there we go. So let me come over here. I'm going to set this as my in point for now. Eventually I'll remove it and set it back as my out point. Now, this yellow lines here represent my soundtrack, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to start to frame the soundtrack on the film. And you'll notice that when I do that on the bottom of the window, it's going to start showing you a waveform that's going to try to calculate based on what's there. So there it is. The other thing I need to do is I need to come over here and tell it where the frame begins and ends. So I'm going to drop this one down to right where the frame is. And then I'm going to go to the end, and I'm going to bring it up to where the frame is right there. And then once I've done that, you're going to see something called search size, which is where it's going to try to determine how big of a search area it's looking for. Once I think I've got a really good setting on it, by the way, I could also set my picture strip where the picture begins and ends and have this program export my image, but I don't want to do that because it's not going to be as good as if I was doing it something like in a Premiere Pro. I click on New Sample, and it's going to quickly go and give me a sample from this particular clip, and then it will allow me to hear it.
Precise alignment and vibration-free mounting of the microscope. The suspension system was...
All right, that sounds good to me. It seems like it's working just fine. So now that I know that it's working well, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to set back to 0 and set my in point there, just to make my life a little bit easier. I'm not going to do any image processing because I'm not looking at the image. I'm going to extract audio from frame 1 to 9614, 48 kilohertz, 16-bit, and I'm going to give it a 26 frame time-code advance, which is a standard for 16 millimeter film. Basically, it's saying what is the offset between the image and what you're hearing. Then I click Extract, browse for my folder, and click on OK. When I do that, it's going to start rendering the file, which is going to take quite a bit of time. And let's come over and we'll see how long it takes us to do that. All right, now that it's done, let's come back over here and take a look. It took about 17 minutes to convert that file. Not too bad, though the file's only about 6 minutes long, so almost a 3-to-1 ratio there. So if I had an hour-long movie, that would have been 3 hours, and this is a fairly fast computer. So let's come back over here to this computer, and let's take a look at the waveform that I just created. So where did I save it to? And there it is. There is the waveform.
Assembly, the system was checked out and then secured by a cap.
There it is. So it sounds great. So now I have to take this WAV file and these series of images, put it together as a single video, and do a couple other things. So let's do that real fast. Let me come over here and load Premiere Pro. And it's actually relatively straightforward what you need to do inside of Premiere Pro to make this work, but a couple things are going to be a little bit different. Let me come over here and first import my media. And when I do that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab the first picture and I'm going to say it's an image sequence. So it's going to come over here and do that, open, and now it's going to open it. And it's going to say, wait a second, that says 5 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's really over 6 minutes. If I go to properties, you're going to see that it's going to think that it is 29.97 frames per second, which it is not. So instead of setting it to 29.97 frames per second, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to modify, interpret footage, and instead of 29.97, I'm going to say, no, it is 24 frames per second. And now it's my 6 minutes and 40 seconds as I expected it to be. I click on OK. And if I bring that timeline out, I've got a beautiful blank timeline. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, if I try to play it, it's going to stutter really bad. And that's because this is uncompressed video, and it really doesn't know what to do with uncompressed video. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it alone for a moment, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to import that waveform, which is one folder up. There it is. I'm going to bring the waveform down, and again, they should line up just fine. It looks pretty good. So if it does line up pretty well, all I have to do now is do a little bit of cleanup. The first thing I'm going to do is decide where I want to begin. All right, so I'm going to cut the film right there. All right, I'm going to get rid of that. That's kind of a fun beginning. I'll jump to the end. The end, the music ends, beautiful. Cut that off at the end. Great, not a problem. Now, the next part of it is, what do I need to do in terms of the image? Now, I'm going to zoom in on this. Obviously, I've got this full frame image here, so I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to zoom in. Interestingly enough, the aspect ratio of the camera is actually the same as the aspect ratio of 16mm film, which is approximately 4:3. Now, I could leave it there with little black bars, or I could probably zoom in a little bit more and even probably, move it just to be exactly where I want it to be. I don't want to see any of that little black stuff, and hopefully there's enough around here that'll make it work. And it looks pretty good. I still got that little bit of in the corner there. I'm going to go a teeny bit more. So now the one thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to come over here to my video effects, and I'm going to go to video effects, adjust levels, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a mid correction here. I'm going to come over here and realize that I probably could go a little bit higher with my gray point, give myself a little bit more gamma here. Nothing too crazy, but enough that it's going to brighten things up a little bit. That was probably a little too much, but figure out exactly what I want to do in terms of brighten things up a little bit. And there you go. And that's it. That's all I need to do. File, export media. I'm going to export it as an H.264 clip. I'm going to leave it as matching of the settings of what I had. So it's going to be a nice big file. All right, let's go ahead and export that and see what we got when we're done. All right, so where's that file? Here it is, high voltage electron microscope. It is 464 megabytes. And there it is.
The vacuum system at the rear of the microscope is an important specimen holder. And vacuum sealed. Stereo microscopy is the most powerful at an American university.
And that's it. It's done. All digitized, all posted to YouTube, ready to go. I'll include the link. You can see it. And that's how we do it here at the Digitization Annex of the Kelvin Smith Library at Case Western Reserve University. I'm Jared, and make sure you check out our other videos. We have a lot of fun stuff that we do down here.